Well, it's another public relations triumph for Islam. I was wondering when the angry street mob would appear, I must admit. Who'd have thought that it would happen right after prayers? What could they have been listening to? Now, the government of Sudan has come in for quite a lot of criticism over this, but, you know, apart from shaming their country, debasing their religion and insulting their prophet, I think they've handled it rather well. Certainly by their usual standards. At least nobody has been massacred yet, which is a step in the right direction. Of course, we were all hoping that they would come to what's left of their senses and admit that this was just an innocent misunderstanding. But of course, as we know, they chose to misunderstand the misunderstanding and make fools of themselves, embarrassing their own people and turning their country into a laughingstock. I bet they're even laughing at them in Pakistan over this one, maybe even in Saudi Arabia. Well, actually, no, in Saudi Arabia they'd probably execute the teddy bear. Why they let this happen, I really don't know. Maybe they felt they weren't getting quite enough contempt for their unparalleled record of murdering their own people in Sudan. Maybe they weren't happy with just being known as the genocide capital of the world, and they wanted to get a little bit more attention, just to show themselves off properly in all their full three-dimensional bollock-brained stupidity. To be fair, the government probably would have let this slide, but for the influence of some hardline clerics who insisted on dragging their religion into the dirt and insulting their own prophet by using his name to score what everyone can see is nothing but a cheap and grubby political point. And they've got the nerve to talk about inciting religious hatred, these spiritual vampires, when they're the ones who've been preaching up this storm of hate, demanding that she be publicly executed to make an example of her, when all they've really done is to make an example of themselves. And it's the usual example, the classic combination of cowardice and cruelty that we've seen time and again embarrass and disgrace the Islamic religion. This has done their faith more damage than 1,000 blasphemies 1,000,000 times over, but they're too thick to realise it. Human nature being what it is, you just can't help wondering now how many pet dogs in the West, or even pot-bellied pigs, have found themselves renamed overnight from Patches or Trixie or Gus. They're even selling Muhammad teddy bears on eBay, for God's sake. This is not a good result for Islam, but then it so rarely is these days. I was listening to a radio interview with a member of the Sudanese parliament, and he was asked if he was insulted by the Prophet's name being used like this, and he said, no, the Prophet Muhammad is beyond any insult. Well, isn't it just a shame that so many of his harebrained followers are not? But I guess that's what happens when little men get hold of big ideas that they don't know how to handle. Men who call themselves scholars and who think they're educated because they've memorized the Quran, which admittedly is quite an achievement, even if it has got nothing to do with knowledge or wisdom and everything to do with self-hypnosis. But now that she's been pardoned and she's coming back to Britain, presumably things will start to return to normal. The Sudanese government will carry on murdering its own people while we stand by and watch. We'll send money to help, of course, as usual, even if much of it does end up in private Swiss bank accounts, as usual, and then we'll wait for the next bunch of opportunistic ignoramuses to disgrace their religion by choosing to be offended yet again about absolutely nothing at all. It's so pathetic in a way that it's almost hardly worth generating the contempt. But I feel like making the effort, don't you? Peace to all teddy bears, whatever they're called.